All right, we're gonna get the party started. Hey, we got some new faces in the crowd tonight, so thank you to every one of you guys for coming that are new, and we got a lot of familiar faces. And we're sitting here. I think today is today the last day of August.
Second to last. Tomorrow's the last.
Next to last day of August, and that's a tough time of year as far as fishing in the state of Texas goes, and we kind of got a full house.
Especially when your fishing license expires tomorrow.
I know. I'm no longer a fishing guide as of tomorrow afternoon unless I do something about it.
Yep.
So I need to get on that. Yeah, if you don't have your fishing license renewed, you might want to do that this weekend. I lost my train of thought.
It's hot. Fishing's tough. Fishing's picking up. The lake's starting to get a few people on it. Starting to see some crowds. The weather's all over the place. We're starting to get a little rain. The lake's been dropping. Now we're getting some rain. I don't know if it's enough to do anything, but we're getting some precipitation.
I can tell you this: we had some rain and we had a cooler day.
Yeah.
And it was enough to make the water temperature drop just a few degrees. And the last time we were here, we kind of discussed how, it was as hot as it gets all year. And that's a good thing, because what that means is it's fixing to go back down the other way. And I'll be dang if the water temp hadn't dropped a few degrees since the last time we met here. And that all happened just a few days ago this week. And we said that when that starts happening, I'm not telling you that the fall patterns will be on at that time, but these fish will, as soon as the water starts to cool off, these fish will start to transition a little bit. There's a little late summer, early fall deal that goes on every year when those fish kind of rise in the water column right there at the end of summer, and then as soon as they get a little bit of a cool trend, they start to kind of get to the mouths of these creeks. And we talked about looking for stop signs and structures and all that. If you were here last time, I'm sure you remember that topic we covered. And one of the things we said was one of the best stop signs that you can have out close to the mouth of a creek is a dock. And I've seemed to get a lot of questions about dock fishing over the last month or so. So tonight I thought that I would, I grew up fishing Lake Conroe down in southeast Texas, just north of Houston a ways. And you better know how to fish a dock if you're going to fish Lake Conroe.
It's got a lot of them.
It's like most of the lake is dock lined. So it's something that I definitely had to learn how to do at a very early age. And I've got a kind of particular procedure that I go through when I'm fishing a dock. So I thought that I'd walk you guys through that tonight, because there is some very good docks to fish out here and on just about all of our lakes around here. And the ones that are out close to the mouths of these creeks, close to the main lake, just inside the mouths, they will fish very well over the next month, starting right now. Starting today, there's already fish on them right now. So it's time to start hitting those. So we're going to go over that. Just drew a typical, standard, real basic T-shaped dock right here. Now, some of this is going to depend on the sun angle. So if the sun angle is coming, if the sun's over here, so this side's more shady, then I'm always going to work this half first. I always want to fish the most shade I can when I'm fishing docks. One of the biggest advantages to a dock is it provides the deepest, darkest shade a fish could ever hope to find. So I want to take advantage of that and fish as much shade as I can. But more importantly than that, I want to fish the outside corners and the outside edges before I get close to the dock. So I'm going to pull my boat up somewhere out here. Is that a boat?
Yeah, a bullet or a boat or something.
It's boatish.
Yeah.
So we're going to pull up right here, and I'm going to stay as far away as I can from that front side of that corner of that dock and make a nice, quiet, soft landing cast to this corner right here. So I'm going to fish this corner first, and then I'm going to progress my way down this dock, and I'll move my boat forward, and I'll hit this whole front side fishing the corner. At this point, I'm now going to slide my boat in tighter to the dock right here. I'm not an art major. I'm not an art major. And now at this point, I'm going to skip under the outside of the dock. These first casts, I'm staying a distance away. I'm landing soft on the outside edge. As I get up here, now I'm going to skip and go up under the dock and move my boat down this way right here. Now remember, sunshine's over here in this scenario. So shade is going to be on this side right here. If I wrote shade right now, it'd be upside down, so I'm not going to try that. But now I'm going to go back down this side of the dock, and I'm going to skip under it as far as I can. Get as far and fish slow and methodical through that. And once my boat reaches this corner here, I'm going to make some cast right down this edge. I'll fish this edge, I'll get my bait right next to the columns. Then I'll swing my boat right out here. Once I've fished the outside edge, I'll swing my boat right out here, and I'll begin to skip under this side, the shady side of the dock. So I'm keeping my bait in the shade, and I'm fishing edges first, underneath second. And the reason I do that is because if there's some fish hanging out on this edge, right on that sunshine edge or whatever it may be, hanging out on those outside pilings, I don't want to get my boat too close and get that trolling motor too close to them and run that fish off before I presented a bait in a quiet manner. So I always want to fish the outside edges and then work the inside. And you can kind of see the progression here. So from here, what do you think we're going to do? We're going to come and we're going to fish this. And then we're going to skip under all of this. And we'll fish it all the way up to the bank. Because when you first start dock fishing on any given day, you don't know. They might be up here, and they might be out here, and they might be anywhere in between there. And there's really no rhyme or reason sometimes for where they are on these docks. Like it got 5 degrees hotter, but for some reason they're up in the dirt. Like that happens. So they might be under the crosswalk, and they might be under the deepest, darkest shade you can. About the only thing I'll tell you is, generally speaking, about the only general rule, but it's not really hard and fast, but the only general rule is the hotter it is, and the longer it's been hot, tends to be the more they're going to relate to the darkest shade. Not necessarily the deepest water, but the darkest shade. So if this particular dock has 2 boat slips right here, right? And light gets to penetrate under these boat slips, those fish, when it's real hot, they might be right back here where the densest shade is. Because you got that center walkway in between your boat slips, and you got this walkway, and there's no sunlight ever penetrating right there in the back center of that. So now you got to come back here and skip from here to get to that. And then once I've fished this side, I will fish the bright side as well. I'll come over here and fish the whole thing. Now, here's the big deal. I've said this several times over the years doing all the video content that we've done here. The number one way to get better at fishing is to pay attention to details. To every little detail. Like, was my bait falling or was it on the bottom when it got bit? Did I hop it up? How did he bite it? Did he thump it or did he just ease up on it and I just felt weight? Like, all these little details are important. Well, when you're dock fishing, this is a really, really, really big deal. You need to remember where every single bite came from and how good they ate it in that spot and how aggressive that bite was. You need to remember these details about dock fishing because, without a doubt, you will be able to pattern where those fish are setting up on docks. You'll be able to go from one dock to the next, to the next, to the next, and pattern the areas that they're wanting to set up on. So if those fish are setting up on this outside shady corner, and you fish this first dock and you get 2 bites here, and you get 1 bite over here, okay, then you go to the next dock and you get a bite here and no bites anywhere else. Well, you know now you've got 3 out of 4 bites on this outside shady corner. Most of the dock fish you're going to catch that day are going to come right there. So now, instead of wasting your time, because it's time consuming to pick a dock apart that thorough. It takes a long time. But once you've gotten some bites, you don't pick the whole dock apart. Once you've kind of located where on that dock those fish are holding, you fish that part of the dock and you move from one to the next quick as you can while still being thorough, cover a lot of water. And if you're trying to fish and do the best you can and catch the best 5 bag you can, being efficient and having your bait in the highest percentage strike zone, that's how tournaments are won. All them guys are real good. Most of them big tournaments are won by the guy that keeps his bait in the strike zone the highest percentage of the day. Yes, sir.
If you get like 10 docks in a row, times you're fishing a tournament, times of the essence. How do you go about like picking a dock?
To start on?
Yeah. Like, let's say
it's a great question.
0-600.
That's a great question.
Get through it quick, right?
Well, if I'm going to start fishing a row of docks, I would prefer the sun to be up when I started so I have some shade lines. I would not really want to start fishing docks first thing in the morning because if you're going to fish docks under cloudy conditions, which they do produce fish sometimes under cloudy conditions, especially when they're transitioning like they're trying to get started doing right now. They'll still hold it even if it's cloudy. The problem is they don't hold all of them. So if you got a dock here and a dock way over here, well, when it's shady in the morning, they're liable to be down this bank right here. And so what I would tell you is that if you're going to start in a shady or cloudy condition, what you want to do is do this, fish it thorough, and then have a square bill or top water or something ready to fish in between the docks and fish that fast. And if you get a reaction bite that tells you there's some in between, then you keep doing that. If you go a few docks and you don't, then maybe you just forgo that deal. There's not really a shortcut to picking which dock to stop on. I would say that the ones that are on If I had a row of 10 docks, I'm going to try to find the one that has something different on the bottom underneath it. So if it's got a little bit of a point or a little bit of a creek channel swinging up closer to the edge of it, if there's some kind of structure that relates tighter to this dock than the rest of them, I'm going to start on that dock because that's going to be my highest percentage dock. With everything that we talk about in all these, when we're talking about areas to fish, whether it's grass or whether it's timber or no matter what the cover is, does everybody know the difference between cover and structure? Cover is what they hide in, structure is like the bottom. So cover can be timber, grass, docks, underwater bridges, whatever. Structure is elevation changes. Drop off into a creek channel, a point that runs out into the lake, a hump, old roadbed, that's structure. So if there's, no matter what cover we're talking about, grass, wood, docks, whatever, if there's structure that correlates to that cover, it soups it up. It makes it better. It makes your odds higher, I should say.
And and I think that's really good. And kind of to add to that, when you're looking at a row of, let's say 10 docks, okay, and there's got to be more to that question. So do I know the lake? Do I know these 10 docks? Am I on Lake Fork? Is it Billy out here on Lake Fork where he's got a 50 to 100 docks that he fishes on a lake that's got 1,500? Lake Palestine has got a row of docks. There's times where I fish tournaments, and I know he's the same because I've watched him fish docks, and I know from previous conversations that this is kind of one of his deals. He might run down a lake to hit a dock.
Yes.
Pull out, run up to another creek to hit a dock. And I do the same thing. And I've got a particular creek that there's 7 or 8 docks. I've got 2 of them. And side imaging comes into play as well when you're looking at this and breaking down docks, especially if they're relating to brush up under a dock. And I won't take too much of your time, but I got a thought I want to run with. When I'm looking at docks, when I'm driving down a lake, especially a lake like Cedar Creek, Lake Palestine, Lake Tyler, a lake that's got a lot of pleasure boaters. Lake Fork doesn't really fit this criteria because about 99% of the people that live on Lake Fork because they like to fish. But if it's not a lake like Lake Fork, let's take Cedar Creek for example, and I'm going down the lake and I'm looking at the dock. I'm going to visibly look at that dock and say, that guy doesn't have brush. That dude out there with a Traeger grill, 2 ski boats, and $87,000 worth of furniture, Sea-Doos, and a big slide, and that probably just going to skip that one. Unless I see kind of a big creek swing or something like that. I go back by, I see a flat bottom boat. Dude's got rods strung all the way around there. He's got white strings hanging all the way down around that dock. We're gonna slide up in there.
You see Christmas trees hanging.
Christmas trees. If you see the white ropes, generally those are trees. Those are what crappie fishermen like to do to keep a tree vertical. They'll tie the top of the tree, put a cinder block or a brick, drop that tree straight down, and then they'll just switch it out every Christmas.
And it keeps it attached. They don't ever lose their cover on their dock. Yeah.
And so that's a good question. And to answer that, I think sometimes, and then there's sometimes, Conroe would be a great example, where if there's 10 docks, we're finna go fishing. We're finna skip a jig, throw a crankbait, especially a jig, man, because you can fish on the bottom 2 or 3 times, throw it in there and reel it in. And you can cover a little bit of water and kind of get going. And Lake Palestine's one that I fish a lot. And you gotta take off and go to kind of figure out what's what. But that's a great question. I just wanted to add that thought.
And there's right now on the Lake Fork package on the Fish Life app, there's 2 different docks marked, and they're both a pair of docks. And one of them is right on the side of a main lake point with a steep drop off that happens in the middle of the dock, like it goes from 3 foot to 14 foot right there. So you got a ledge that correlates to that dock. No, it's just out on the main lake. And then there's another one, and that one's kind of isolated. There's a few docks around it, but it's not a big area of docks where that one's marked. But there's another one that's marked where it's like half a mile of dock. One of the biggest stretches of docks on this whole lake. But there's one particular dock that the creek channel actually comes and swings underneath the end of it, and it swings out beside the next dock that's right here. And these 2 docks, they're money. They always hold big fish, especially in the heat.
Trying to put together what y'all are saying, do you skip the rest of the docks then? Or do you fish?
In this particular case, where I've got a whole row of docks and they all look the same,
right,
visually, I got that creek channel swinging tight to that. That's going to be my first one I go to. I'm not saying I'm going to skip all them other docks. Like if I'm on a dock pattern, I'll fish those other docks.
Okay.
But like in that particular stretch, that's good we got this post board, huh?
Worked out.
Worked out real good. So in that,
Todd's gonna fail, but
yeah, my kid's not gonna get his homework in, but we got a poster.
hey, education's important, but fishing is
Yeah, I got
way important.
Fishing's life.
So
Fishing is life.
when fishing is life. That's right. So you got a stretch of bank that runs down. It's got a little cut in it. It runs down here. It's got another little cut in it. It runs down here. Well, the creek comes out here and kind of wanders and gets close over here, and then it gets real close over here, and then down here is where it swings under the dock.
Right.
So in this stretch right here, and this is docks. I'm talking about dock. The whole thing is docks all the way through. In this particular stretch, my favorite docks are these that the creek swings underneath. That's my number one.
You having a meeting?
My next one is I've got a point in a creek channel that's fairly close right here. So this is my number 2.
I got you.
Is that 2 or is that backwards?
No, that's
That's
two.
backwards.
I don't know what it is.
It's still 2.
That's it.
It looked good in the mirror.
Look like
It will look good.
I messed up- I
That's
messed up
number 2.
5.
And then right here, the creek swings a little further away from the bank. It doesn't get quite as close. And these docks aren't necessarily on a point. So this is going to be number 3. I also like these docks that are on this point right here.
Okay.
But that's a distant 4 to the top 3. And this is kind of a
Almost
distant.
exactly like it is. It's what's crazy.
Yeah, I was gonna
You know what I'm talking about.
You did.
I fished it a bunch.
Me too.
I fished those docks on the fish like that, but I stopped after like 3 docks up.
Yeah. And so this one over here is where the waypoint is.
Right.
The one that's up on the east side of the lake.
Yeah,
This is
yeah.
where the waypoint is on the app. But all of this is good, but this is better. And you catch bigger fish on that one because it has a more dynamic piece of structure relating to it.
I got you.
You know, and so if you've got, I'm gonna ask you this. So if you've got these 2 premier docks right here, and the bite's pretty good,
Yeah.
would you hit this one, and then maybe hit the ones beside it just
Yeah.
to check?
Yeah.
Because fish live in
They're gonna
schools.
spread out.
That's kind of my fish live in schools.
And the deal is the reason that big fish relate to that dynamic structure in that dock is because it's an awesome home for fish, not for bass, for fish. So that means there's going to be a better chance of there being a big population of gizzard shad, brim, sand bass, crappie, catfish, whatever. Shut up, y'all, both of y'all, shut up. But you know what I'm saying? And so that's why we catch the bigger bass there, is because there's a greater food source there. And so when there's a greater food source there, then these docks beside it can also get kind of some overflow action from that. So absolutely. Basically, the deal with dock fishing, and the reason I started on this right here and we went in depth on this, is because I don't want to say any dock, but for sure most docks can hold fish. Right now, the ones I'm focusing on are the ones that either have some type of weird dynamic structure like the one we just talked about, or the ones that are just inside the mouth of a major creek where these fish are about to start wanting to migrate here in the next month. Those docks are starting to get fish on them, so I know that just from seasonal patterns, so I'm concentrating on those docks as well. But the big deal is whatever stretch of dock that you're going to fish, whether it's got 5 or whether it's got 105, they can kind of be under any of them to some degree, so you got to be good at this.
Okay.
You got to go pick the first few apart, find out where they're holding on the docks that day, and then be real efficient covering them all. And that's how you get better at dock fishing. And then over time, you'll learn, okay, I tend to catch more on this little stretch of 3 docks than I do on the rest of it. And you can kind of zero in.
Okay.
So I'm trying to teach this as if it's for a lake that I've never been to, right?
Yeah, I fished Cedar Creek a lot. I got a place there, and I've
Yeah.
spent all day
Great
long
dock lake.
on one cove, right?
Yeah.
And caught nothing.
Right.
And switched to crappie then. Right on
Yeah.
that.
And what he's saying is great. I've actually fished a lot of tournaments at Cedar Creek.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you a quick story, just a 5-minute story. I was fishing a tournament one year, and it was February, going into February, and it was really tough. And I was talking to some buddies of mine that were really good fishermen, and this is a big tournament, and they were struggling. I mean, it was just like no bites. Some guys went out and they're like, dude, we went out there and fished 10 hours, we didn't get a bite. So I decided I was going to have to kind of simplify things. I couldn't chase them everywhere. I'm going to fish docks, and I decided I'm going to fish docks. I'm going to look for a certain type of dock. I want to find a dock on a main lake point that's going to have deep water pretty close by. Okay. And so what I actually found on this particular deal is I took my map out and I looked around, and obviously the whole lake's covered in docks. So I focused on points where I knew that these fish would eventually migrate to spawn, which kind of goes into play with what Billy's talking about for the same, they kind of go to the same areas in the back creeks. So I'm looking at main lake points that have got deep water right up next to the point, and I'm going to concentrate on those docks. And so the last day of practice, the first dock that I went to, I caught a 5-pounder. And I was like, okay, I'm up to something. But one thing I noticed, and this is getting into depth just a little bit, is it's a core lake, right? Yeah. So you don't have wood.
No, it's not Core Lake.
Well, who's the
Fort Worth owns it.
Okay, I thought it was core. So but anyways, you don't have wood. You have metal post docks on that lake.
That's
They've
right.
done away with all the wood. Well, this particular dock that I caught this fish off of had wood.
Okay.
Okay, you with me now?
Yeah.
So I went to my next dock on my next area, and I fished 2 or 3 docks around it and didn't get bit. So I went to my next point that I had mapped out, and I didn't get bit. And so I was trying to figure out what the difference was. So I went to my next dock, and we caught a 3-pounder, and it had wood on it.
Okay.
So from there, all I did is I ran and I marked the docks that met the pattern that had wood. Come tournament time, we caught a 10.5-pounder off one of those docks, and we got either 3rd or 4th place in the tournament. And it was one of those deals, like Billy said, you got the deep water, you got the dock, and then you found, kind of like he's talking about that corner right there, we found something that specifically held those fish there. And it was wintertime, we caught them on a drop shot, but that was kind of the deal, is that wood kind of holds heat a little bit. Metal warms up faster, but then it also gets cold faster, and that wood would kind of hold the heat up. The black spots that get all over the bass in the cold, the bass we were catching had the black spots. They were holding real lethargic right up to the wood on those few docks. But and so that's how we decided which dock, and we had like 6 docks that we were going to fish. But when nobody's catching fish, those 6 docks were a huge deal.
Yep. But that's refining it down to an extreme level. That's a great job that they did in that tournament. And that's what you want to do when you're dock fishing. And that process of going, now, once you've kind of targeted your structure deal and you get on the dock itself, that process of picking it apart the way we showed you tonight, that's how you're going to really dissect where within the dock, and then you can really start refining the pattern. And it gets to a point where you can pretty much call your shot. Like, if you're catching them on docks that are on points and you're catching them on the back left corner of them, you can just quit fishing the rest of it and just run to the dock on the point, throw the back left corner and catch your fish, and then go to the next one. Like, you can start calling. You can really get exact with a pattern on the dock.
I've seen that at Palestine a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just dock fishing. They'll pattern real good like that on dock fishing. Let's talk.
I appreciate that. That's
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about some of my baits that I want to fish on dock. So there's a few different ways to attack a dock. It's just another piece of cover, and it's like fishing timber out here or fishing anything else. There's a lot of different ways to go about it, but there's a few that I stick by that seem to work really well. My favorite thing to throw on a dock is probably everybody's favorite thing, and I like it, and I'll tell you why I like it. So my favorite thing is a jig, and I like to throw a 3/8 ounce jig, and I like something that's got a flat bottom to it, a wide head with a flat bottom. I don't want a football jig because that'll get hung up in every cross member and everything else, but a jig that has kind of a flatter bottom, that's going to help you skip it. So the old Arky style heads were great.
Yeah,
they were phenomenal for skipping docks. The 6-cents hybrid jig does a great job of skipping as well. It's the Santone jig.
Yeah.
It's got that flat part on the bottom.
And they've got an Arky style jig that I like. It's got a smaller hook, but the head does skip well.
There you go. So you got to find, most important thing is if you're going to fish docks with a jig, you got to find one you can skip real good. And so, because you need to get up under that dock. The reason I like a jig so much is because a jig is just one of the most versatile baits you'll ever throw. And when I'm fishing a dock, I'm trying to be real efficient and real versatile with whatever bait I'm throwing, especially when I first start fishing them. I'm trying to figure it out. So now I can take that jig and I can flip it up to that post, and it falls to that post, and it's like a little Texas rig with extra moving parts in the skirt, right? But I can also skip it under that dock, let it go way down to that post, and then I can swim it out. And it's a swim jig or a swim bait, it's a swimming creature bait. So now I've got another factor to it. I've caught a gazillion fish skipping a jig as far up under the dock as I can, let it go to the bottom, and just point my rod down the reel. I've caught a million fish swimming a jig out from under a dock. It's a really effective technique. And that's one of the very few baits that you can efficiently get under a dock and fish it as a moving bait. You can't really skip a square bill up under a dock. I mean, if you're an expert and if you got a gap this tight, you better hit it perfect every time. I mean, square bill is going to be a really tough thing to do. Swim baits,
go through some of them.
Swim baits don't skip very good. A lot of swim baits don't skip real good in tight gaps. Big swim baits will skip good, but you need more play than you usually get on a dock. If the lake's low, you can skip a bigger swim bait up under there real easy. But
And a hollow body will skip a little bit. Holly, your 4.5-inch holly will skip a little
It
bit.
will a little bit. It's just not nearly as efficient as
No.
that jig is, and I can swim that jig. So it's one of the only moving baits you can fish under a dock, and that's why it's my number one pick because it's the most versatile. But I will tell you this time of year, to me, probably the best bait you can throw once you've got some bites dialed in and you kind of know what you're fishing. There's two things. One's going to be a 1/4 ounce shaky head, and the other one's going to be a weightless wacky worm. Because fish do what in the end of summer? They suspend, right? You see all them fish suspended on the main lake, they'll suspend up under them docks too. And so if you take that wacky worm, and it's about the only time the spinning rod comes into play for me, and I don't like throwing spinning rods, y'all know that. But a spinning rod will come into play because I can take a wacky rig stick bait and skip it under that dock with that spinning rod. And you can't skip a weightless stick bait with a bait caster. So if I feel like the fish are suspended, I'm seeing shad flick up under the dock, I'm hearing the bass blow up under the dock, I'll throw a wacky worm, or you want to tell them?
What?
Skipping that frog up under that dock.
I don't know about no frog.
If you can hear them if you can hear them blowing up in front of there and you hear that bait fish jumping on that dock, do not be scared to grab your frog. A frog will skip very well.
Yeah.
And you can catch the biggest fish that live on that dock, on that frog up under there. So that's the 4 baits I use. I really don't use a whole lot of. I will say this: I do like fishing the outside edges with a crankbait, with a square bill.
100%. A square bill and kind of a medium diving crankbait. And I think
Depending on the depth of the dock.
and if you get on a dock crankbait bite, a lot of times, maybe not as much in the fall, well, a lot of times fall, but if you get on a pre-spawn dock crankbait bite, you better hang on. I'll add one more bait. Now, I want to kind of give you my thoughts on a jig. So one thing that I think is important in the summertime is to get a reaction out of the fish. Everybody knows that I've been fishing the grass lakes, and Billy was talking about, joking earlier about not fishing these power plant lakes in the summertime before. And the only one that the only two I've ever fished in the summertime before are Martin Creek, which we used to fish a whole lot of tournaments on, and then Brandy Branch. And one thing that happens a lot of times in the summer is the bait's plentiful, the bass don't really want to eat, and the only way you can get them to eat is to get them to react. And so a fast-moving bait or a frog in the grass, stuff like that will get them to react. And so a lot of times in the summer, and I'm considering now still summer, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Today's giving us the indication that fall's on the way, but it's still hot.
It was
It's
102.
freaking August.
It was 102 yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, half the time we got to wear a bikini in Halloween around here, so it's still summertime. So
No, Ronnie, you never have to wear a bikini.
I'm not the only one that wears a bikini in Halloween. I'm not, am I?
You're the only one with your body type.
So a 3/4 ounce jig, I'll throw a 3/4 ounce jig now, and in my opinion, and you know, we've all got opinions. Me and Billy have different styles of it, which is why I love coming to these, because I can just tell you now, me sitting here, just like you guys are sitting here going, okay, you're thinking of spots and areas either at Fork. I'm sitting here doing the same thing. I'm listening to it. Oh, all right, yeah, you're right. That's good. That's what I'm going to try tomorrow. But thinking about this, we've got different styles and things, and for me, I think it's hard to beat anything ball head. When it comes to shaky heads, the spot remover got real popular. You guys remember the spot remover? I don't think that a spot remover catches more fish than a ball head jig. I think that ball head has just a natural presentation to it. And so I like a ball head jig. And what I will throw on that Texas finesse jig is a smalley beaver, because it's flat. It's like
That's
skipping a rock.
We do actually agree on that. That's
Yeah,
exactly
it
how
is.
I rig up my finesse jigs, is with the smalley beaver.
It's
ball head.
it's probably one of, and I'll actually, the two, you know, if you guys are familiar with a smalley beaver, it's got the two little tabs that stick off the side. I'll pull those off so they don't drag. And I'll take 17-pound line or 15-pound line most of the time, and I can make a roll cast with that Eakins jig, and it's better than a skip. It's a glide. It'll glide and smooth. It's just smooth as it gets. It's like it's skiing. It just slides up in there. And other styles of jigs will do it, but man, nothing for me. And so the two opposite ends of the spectrum for me in the summer on jig fishing are a heavy straight fall to get a reaction strike, or the finesse jig to go for a finesse presentation.
Now, who remembers 2 weeks ago that was here what we were talking about, the two ways to catch them when it gets tough at the end of summer or early fall?
swim back.
You either that was Heath Taylor was his question, but no.
It don't
what
matter
we
as long as
talked
you're
about
doing swim
is
bait.
you either got to go super reaction and make them react, or you got to go super finesse and tease them into it.
Yeah.
You can't just go normal fishing. You got to kind of adjust to one extreme or the other. That's exactly what
In the heat of the summer and the dead of the winter, that's
Yeah.
beautiful. And man, dock fishing is you can make a living off of it.
Since we're talking about dock fishing, now this is wintertime, late fall, winter, and pre-spawn, but we can't talk about fishing docks without talking about maybe the best bait to throw around docks that there is, and the way to catch the biggest bags of fish around docks, and that is going to be an Alabama rig.
I've never heard of
An
it.
Alabama rig around a dock in the cold time of year can catch some amazing fish.
And you can fish it weedless with the little owner flashy swimmers, with
Yeah.
the docks that have brush, and,
Yeah.
and you can pull every fish out from under the dock.
And they will
not
come
everybody
out,
does it.
they will track and come out from under that dock, and they will knock the fire out
Might
of
as
it.
well have baling wire in my barrel.
Yeah, yeah, but I'll tell you what, if you're fishing a tournament and they're on that thing, you better throw it.
And it's also fun, you know, with the equipment we've got, dude.
Yeah.
Your rods that you've got, I mean, they don't weigh anything. You can fish, and we do. We fish an Alabama rig all day and have no issues
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And when you've
We'll
got
flip it. It'd be like this with an Alabama
yeah,
rig.
and if you've got the right equipment, you can be super efficient. I mean, you can take that weight of that bait all the way down and fish these docks. And I will tell you this.
And the Alabama rig I'm using on docks, guys, is a very light Alabama rig. I get the lightest belly weighted hook I
Yeah.
can. I mean, it's a light bait. It's not what the original Alabama rig that came out had a bunch of quarter ounce heads on it that weighed 35
Or
ounces.
more, because we were throwing storm swim baits.
Yeah, oh, the storm swim baits that weigh an ounce
Oh,
each.
we didn't
It was
know no
just
better,
stupid.
dude.
But
Surf rods.
yeah, we had
Pin reels.
had Vic's, we had to borrow Vic's catfish rods.
Dude, I would crow hop.
Yeah, crow off. But yeah, no, the one that I'm fishing now in the wintertime, it's very light because I do want it to. I want to be able to, in the wintertime, fish that Alabama rig, just barely keep the tails kicking, just real slow. If you got any weight on it,
Just
man,
keep
it's
it
gonna
away
be on
from the grass.
It's gonna be on the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, and so for me, when I got back into fishing in 2015, coming back into it pretty hardcore, I grabbed Alabama rig with the owner flashy swimmers and little Kitech swim baits. And the very first, you know, it happens that way for you a lot of times when you get a bait, you pick up a bait and you go out, and the first time you throw a whopper plopper, the guys that are in here, they're gonna be like, man, I love a whopper plopper. It's because you had success on it. The guys that are in here that have never caught fish on a jig, you're like, I hate a jig. It's because you haven't caught fish on it. So the Alabama rig, the first stinking dock I pulled up to at Lake Tyler, like a whole wad of bass came out from under the dock. I was like, oh, I got nervous. I almost just gave them the rod. I thought they wanted it more than me.
They're about to jump me.
I was like, this is not what's supposed to happen. So I realized real quick that there's something to that. And then I know I'm chasing that, but Billy took me out there and threw that Alabama rig in some grass, and then we'll talk about that later on.
Yeah,
Because I don't.
that's
wanna-
a whole other seminar.
We'll hit that like in May next year.
After we're done using it.
Yeah, after we're
I
done
hear
with it. Man, that's good stuff on the dock fishing.
Yep.
And a
Any
chatterbait. You didn't talk about chatterbait, but it is. And I know you're the chatterbait guy, but it is a spinnerbait, crankbait, jig, swim bait.
and you can show skip that chatterbait. Stump catching full. But
It is a
you
stump
can,
catching full.
You can skip a chatterbait too.
You can unwind a reel on a chatter jig under a dock.
Any questions? Any questions about dog fishing? We covered it pretty good, I think.
What do you use from Arky?
No,
Just
the
a-
Arky's a style
It's
of
a
jig head.
shape of a jig head. Is that the M series?
But
It's them series. I'll tell you-
Lures, right, is the one that makes it?
No,
No,
Arky,
no.
no, sir. Arky is just the style. So
Santone from right here in East Texas, they make one that has an Arky style head. I think it's called the M
it
series.
is. It's the M series.
And it's got that Arky style head. It's just an old school style head. It's got a flatter bottom on it, and it skips really good under dog.
And a lot of guys would argue that that's the better shape of jig head. I would argue that if the fish is that calibrated, I would prefer to have his buddy with a helmet eating crayons looking in the window. No offense.
Hey, wait a minute. What just happened?
He loves fuchsia.
What's your favorite?
Orange. Arky style is a jig head, and I will give you an example of an Arky style. A chatterbait, just regular, the head on a chatterbait, that head is considered an Arky style head.
Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you have a flat line
the
tie or this
original
line tie.
Z-
And I was thinking, what are you doing at Walmart buying Arky lures stuff?
Dude,
No,
you
not Arky, but they were the ones that originally designed that head design, and it's
Oh.
just one of the all-time classics. And not many jigs are made like that anymore. but it's probably the best head design for skipping a dock. If you don't know how to skip a jig, we have I've made a couple videos on how to skip a jig to give you kind of. There's a certain way to set your reel up to help you when you first start. Now, I'm gonna tell you, there ain't no foolproof way. When you first start trying to skip something on the baitcaster, you're probably gonna have a little bit of overrun going on every once in a while. But we've made some skipping videos, and if you'll just search how to skip a jig on the Your Lake Fort Guy channel, you'll find it. And there's some good stuff that'll help you kind of get the beginnings of it, get the basics.